if disaster struck and I lost my law license today, here are the 3 steps that I would take to get it back and rebuild all of my wealth, right? So, if I had to build wealth from $0, these are the things that I would do, knowing what I know now. So, first, I would still invest in real estate. I know you probably thought I was going to say I would invest in the stock market, S&P, crypto, blah, blah, blah. No, I would still invest in real estate, but I would take a totally different approach. So I learned about real estate investing through a course, and the course was excellent. But the course did not teach me what I learned in my next real estate education investing program, which was how to invest in auctions, right? So foreclosure auctions, tax deed sales, those types of auctions. And the key difference here is what I learned in my course that I took was how to buy retail properties or even off market properties, but pretty much at retail prices. And so I was looking at investments listed on the MLS, people trying to sell their homes or trying to sell their investment properties. And so paying top dollar, having to get hard money loans and all that stuff, right? But I could have used that same money to build a huge portfolio just by buying foreclosures and tax deeds. Okay. So this is something that I learned much later in my real estate investing career. So by the time I learned about tax deeds and foreclosures, I was already what, I don't know, 5 properties in, something like that. And I could have taken that same money. So like with my first investment in real estate, my first multifamily, I had saved from my paycheck because remember, I'm a high paid attorney. My starting salary when I started as an attorney was over $180,000. So I had the cash. So I was saving money thinking that I needed to save $60,000, $78,000, $80,000 to buy a multifamily. I could have took that same money, gone to an auction and bought multiple properties, okay? In multiple multifamilies, right? Because pretty much every county has auctions of some sort. So if I could go back and if I had to start over and start from scratch, I would definitely have gone the auction route and invested in that type of education as opposed to the types of real estate investing educators who teach you how to buy retail properties off the MLS, right? So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is I would still do private money lending. Now, I didn't learn about private money lending until I was already investing in real estate. But if I could have done those two simultaneously, oh, best believe I would have definitely done that because private lending is way faster in terms of building wealth. The overhead is, almost non existent. And the interest rates are excellent, right? So imagine I have this real estate portfolio of properties and I have no mortgages on them. So they're pretty much just cash flowing positively. And then on the other hand, I have a private lending portfolio and I'm either getting big chunks of money every few months or so, or I have someone on a, year, 8 months, whatever, and I'm getting that steady cash flow. Beautiful thing, right? I would have started lending out my IRA ASAP.
Shut up and take my money.
Okay, so my retirement account would be huge. I could have loaned out my savings account, all the things. Okay, so those are the two that I definitely would have ran back, but just in a different way. And I would have invested in that education sooner instead of waiting till later. And the crazy thing is, like, the way that I learned about private lending is very obscure. It was through a series of podcasts. I didn't even listen to podcasts before 2020. It was not till 2020 when a couple people sent me a podcast and I started listening to podcasts and audiobooks. Before that, I was reading physical books, which you can imagine takes a very long time. You can get through way more content if you're reading audiobooks and listening to podcasts. So, podcasts exposed me to the self directed IRA, which then got me exposure to private lending. So, if I had started doing those things sooner, I would have done that. The third thing is I would have invested in either Ghana or Dubai way earlier. Okay. So someone recently told me that the investments and the people investing in Ghana in 2018 are just balling out today, right? In 2026. And I was like, dang, like I didn't know nothing about that in 2018, right? I was barely investing in the US. I mean, I started investing in 2016 in real estate. So 2018, I'm just, getting the hang of things. So like I don't know nothing about investing in Ghana or Dubai. I had never been to Ghana or Dubai. And so I wouldn't have known to even look there. But if I had to start all over, lost my law license or whatever, I would have definitely invested in international real estate with the specific strategy of doing Airbnb. And that's another thing. If I understood more about taxes like I do now, I would have been way more strategic about how I set up these properties. Because I had Airbnbs, and then for some of them, I took them off the market, off the short-term rental market, and deployed them as long-term rentals, which really messed me up from a tax perspective. Let me tell you. But I didn't know that, okay, until after I already made that change. So knowing what I know now, I would always maintain a short-term rental here in the US and probably one abroad as well, and never be in a position again where, my losses in real estate are locked up in the property and being passed on from year to year just because I don't have any active or I mean passive income to offset it with, or however the tax people say it. The point is, I would maintain a short-term rental here in the US. I would maintain a short-term rental abroad, just from a tax perspective. So those are three things that I would definitely do. And if I could add a bonus thing, so something I'm starting to learn about now is syndications. And I was exposed to the concept of syndications years ago, but it didn't match my early retirement strategy. And so I was like, that doesn't really fit anything that I'm trying to do. But I read a book called The Lifestyle Investor. And what I learned in that book is it's just the criteria that was being presented to me that made it unappealing. So, for instance, I was being presented multifamily syndication deals where they had your principal locked up for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then maybe paying quarterly returns of 10%. And I was like, don't nobody got 7 years to be doing this, okay? And I'm thinking like that's just industry standard. I've even talked to people and they said like, no, that's pretty standard. That's pretty good. And I'm like, that's not good for me, right? Then I read this book, The Lifestyle Investor, and he's talking about how he achieved financial freedom through investments like private lending, syndication, etc. And I was like, syndications. But the way that he looks at syndications is he's very narrow with what he wants out of them. So he only does syndications where he can get his principal back in 1 to 2 years. And I was like, you could do that? Like, I didn't even know that those types of opportunities existed. But in the book, he explains how you can find these types of opportunities and how it will definitely limit the ones available to you. But if you find a good one, absolutely go for it. And he even talks about how to negotiate better terms. And I was like, okay, now if this information was available to me before, like I would have definitely invested in a syndication. Another thing I learned last year about syndications is that not only are there multifamily syndications, meaning syndications that buy multifamily properties and have passive investors. So not only are there those types of syndications, but there's also debt funds, which is like mind blowing to me, right? Because I'm in the private money lending space. So think of it as a fund that pulls the money from other investors and they go out and do much larger loans, but these loans can still be shorter term, right? So your money's still not locked up for 5 years, 7 years. You can do one of these debt funds or debt syndications and only have your money locked up for 9 months, 12 months, get your principal and crazy interest back. I didn't know that existed, right? So if I had to start over, these are the strategies I personally would explore. Definitely real estate, but stick to the auction sales. I will buy them cash because, I mean, the main thing that I think makes it difficult to really positively cash flow and build um, that financial freedom through real estate is the overhead of things like a mortgage and all the constant repairs and etc. The taxes, the interest you're paying to service that debt, right? So I would buy real estate, but definitely at auctions, foreclosure auctions, and at tax deed sales. The next thing I would do is I would still do private lending. I'd probably do it in Texas and Georgia to start. I would use my retirement account, my Roth self directed IRA, but I would also use my savings account. And then third, I would invest in either Ghana or Dubai and do an Airbnb specifically. Or maybe I would invest in both, because I mean, when I first started as an attorney, I was a very high earner. I mean, I'm still a high earner as an attorney, but I was high earning and needed something more passive, but had the income, they give you crazy bonuses and things like that. So there's definitely the cash available to deploy. And so I could have done, both Ghana and Dubai, when I first started. And then the last thing, the bonus thing is I would have started doing a deep dive on this whole syndication situation, see what they talk about, and explore opportunities outside of the ones that were being presented to me. And I would have probably learned much sooner that there are better syndication opportunities than these ones that have your money locked up for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And I could have been growing that thing and, really getting things going much faster. And so honestly, if I had started with this type of information, I probably would have retired way sooner, So my plan is to retire the end of 2028. But if, I started as an attorney in 2019, if I started with these strategies at that time, making what I was making, bruh, look, y'all wouldn't know me, okay? Because I would be somewhere, probably on somebody's beach, sipping on some, I don't know, non-alcoholic drink. So keep that in mind. Definitely think about that if you're a high earner. So I'm talking about attorneys, doctors, surgeons, engineers, whoever else is making six figures or more and has low expenses. Definitely think about the investments that make sense for the future you're trying to build.